In this ever-changing world of social media and information, life is often boiled down to just one soundbite. We want to change that with our new series, 10 Uncut. Each month, we sit down with a local newsmaker and spend time diving into real topics with real answers, unedited and unfiltered. We begin with Knoxville's Chief of Police, Paul Noel. Now entering his second year as the Chief of Police, we discussed everything from an internal investigation to his department to his family life. How is life in Knoxville?
I love it. I've been here now about a year, and I've been working a lot. I work probably about 7 days a week, but I've gotten out and, gone to some sporting events, and I love live sporting events. I've gotten out and done a lot of hiking in Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina. I love to hike. And so when I get that chance, I get out and just try to relax.
So your favorite things to do, hike, what else do you do in your off time?
Outdoors, so I like to try to stay in shape, run, and lift little weights. But really, sporting events. I used to play softball back in the day, but I don't really have time to do that now. But I like just getting out in the woods, and there's a great environment to do that up here.
How's your family liking it?
My wife loves it. So this is something where if we decided that I was going to try to be a police chief somewhere, most places she did not want to go. And this is one of the few places she was really excited about going.
Now, is she born and raised New Orleans?
Yes.
And so are you?
Yes.
So this is probably not your first time living out of this state?
This is the only time we've ever lived outside of New Orleans.
Wow.
Yes.
So this is a shift, but you've adjusted nicely, it seems.
Yes, we have. But it's a monumental shift.
I bet.
Yes.
What's the biggest difference between here and New Orleans?
The biggest difference is being able to walk into a dive place and get a phenomenal po' boy. That's the biggest difference. We have great food here in Knoxville, and I love to get out and eat and try all of the the food scene. We have great food, but being able to walk into like a gas station and just get like the best po' boy ever, that's the big difference.
A fish at a gas station, I wouldn't recommend that here.
No, I would not. No, absolutely not. But in New Orleans, some of the best places to eat are places that when you look at it from the outside, you would not think they had good food.
This town probably differs in many ways crime-wise. Like what, in terms of policing, what is the difference between here and New Orleans?
Oh, it's night and day. So New Orleans is obviously a very violent city. New Orleans is a very poor city, and Knoxville is completely different. We have violence issues. We have gang issues here in Knoxville, but we don't have them at the level that other major cities like New Orleans has.
Has that been a nice change for you?
It has, because it allows me as a police chief in the police department to be able to focus on the things we really want to do, like working closely with the community to solve problems, as opposed to always just dealing with violence only. And that's what happens in a lot of big cities, is you really get bogged down in only dealing in violence. And Knoxville is a very safe city. We do have our share of crime, but it's a very safe city, so it gives us the opportunity to really do things that are enjoyable, is working with members of the community and make their lives better.
And connecting with the community is probably part of that. How do you feel that's gone in your first year?
Oh, it's been great. We've tried a lot of different things. We've tried coffee with a cop, and a lot of people didn't really want to come out for that. But now we're trying these district commander forums, where we have a monthly forum with our leadership team, not just me, but with the leadership below us. And one of the biggest pieces of that was the reorganization of the department to 3 districts, but also, even more important than that, pushing down levels of responsibility to lower levels in the organization to give the leaders below me more freedom to maneuver and interact with the community and make decisions. And I think that's really going well, and I think you're seeing a lot of positive changes in the community and also in the police department because of that.
Well, it's interesting because you guys just released a report about, I guess that was a month or so ago, about crime being down. I believe murders down 33%, burglaries down over 30%. It's weird because in a time in America where we're seeing mass shootings on the news all the time, it feels like every day I'm getting a news alert of a mass shooting. It feels that we're in contradiction with the rest of America, because how are we seeing a downward trend in crime and everywhere in the nation feels more violent than ever? How do you make sense of that?
So I think, we're doing really well right now, but one thing you got to remember with crime, especially violent crime, it can be cyclical. So we'll go up and we'll go down. Like, just in the last week, we've had a series of violent incidents, 2 of which were domestic, very hard for police to prevent those. But I think that the most important thing is you have to remember as police officers, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't look into that crystal ball and see who committed what crime. We depend upon physical evidence and help from the community. And that's why that trust with the community and the relationship with the community is so important, because they help give us information to help us solve these crimes. So I think that's really why we're doing so well right now. And if you look at shootings, which are down double digits, robberies, which are down double digits, almost all categories right now, as of this interview, are down, and property crimes double digits. We're really doing well, and I think I really attribute that to the hard work and the men and women of KPD and the community, and we have our violence interrupters return up Knox as well that are helping us out. So we have a lot of cylinders that are really kicking at high gear right now.
Does it feel good to see those numbers? I know you said they're cyclical, but I mean, that has to make you kind of breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, my first year's gone well.
It makes me feel good, but the main thing that I'm really focused on right now is building systems, right? The crime numbers will come in time where we want that to be, and we still have a long way to go with that. But what makes me feel good right now is we're building systems where systems never existed before. We're perfecting old systems, and we're building policies and perfecting policies where they either never were or they were where they were stagnant. That's really what makes me feel good, is building the foundation. You have to look at this like building a building. And right now what we're doing is we're in the bottom stages. We're building the foundation. And without a very strong foundation, no agency is going to be able to stand strong. And that's where we are right now.
And that started with recruitment, with hiring, with the structure of how you do background checks on potential officers, on how internal affairs was organized. Talk about some of those fundamental changes that began recently.
Absolutely, and this is all systems thinking, right? So, when I walked in the door, internal affairs was involved in more than just investigating police officers. And we changed the name of that, by the way. We changed it to the Office of Professional Standards. But internal affairs was conducting background checks on potential applicants. And what internal affairs, what they're really designed to do is to investigate whether or not an officer committed a specific offense. And what a background investigator is really doing is trying to measure the character and integrity of a potential applicant to see if they have what it takes to join the police department. And we were really getting a different outcome with internal affairs. It's almost like they were looking for, and it's not their fault, but it's just the way they're designed. They were looking for that one smoking gun to say, aha, this person now can't join KPD. And when you have a background investigator, they're measuring that total character. And once we have someone that has a strong moral character, even though they may have flaws in their life, we all have flaws in our life, and we determine they could come and join our police department, we could teach everything else. We could teach the academic side. We could teach the physical side. So reshaping internal affairs was a big piece of that, because it not only touched the individual lives of our police officers, but it really also inhibited potential employees from joining our department as well.
And you really wanted to increase diversity among officers. That was one of your main goals. How has that gone? So
it's going slow, but we're getting there. This last group of hires that we just hired was the most diverse group probably in the history of KPD. And diversity is a challenge within this whole region. So I know that this is going to be an uphill struggle long term. But the first thing that we need to do is remove the inhibitors from people of color, for females, of joining the Knoxville Police Department. And that's what we're doing right now. The second wave of that is actually going out and aggressively trying to identify as many people of color and female applicants as we can and encourage them to join KPD. And one of the things that we're doing right now is the philosophy that we have with recruiting is we're approaching that just like a college football coach would approach getting players. If you look at how, like Josh Heupel right here at UT, he approaches recruiting. He's calling, his staff is calling potential applicants, trying to encourage them to join the team. We're doing the same thing. I'm picking up the phone once a week. I get a list of people that are interested in KPD. I'm calling them, I'm texting them right from my cell phone, trying to really, share some of the great things that we have going on at KPD. My deputies below me are doing the same thing. And I think it's, really special when someone is considering what police department they want to join when they get a phone call from a police chief or a deputy chief, because we know that those applicants are applying for multiple departments all at the same time.
Heupel dealing with a much bigger budget to hire recruiters, and obviously there's a lot of incentives now with the NIL, so
yes.
He has a lot on his side. How is that going in terms of officer pay for you?
So, last year, I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for passing the largest pay increase in the history of the Knoxville Police Department. So our pay is competitive. But I think when people are looking at working for a police department, pay is important, but pay is not everything. They're looking to come to an organization where they're valued. They're looking to come to an organization where they can make a difference. And they're looking also to come to an organization where they could change jobs within an organization without changing jobs. We have a lot of different things at KPD. We have K-9, we have drug units, we have investigators, we have negotiators, we have internal affairs, all of these different jobs that some smaller agencies don't have. So we have a very attractive workplace for the long term. So the pay is something that's important, but also creating an environment where people feel valued, they feel respected, they feel a part of the team, they can come in and help make a great city safe.
This is your first time as chief. How do you know all this? Is it your experience just working under people over the years and having all the experience in law enforcement that you do? Like, I don't know how one just sits down at the desk and is like, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Sure.
How do you know?
So I've had some great mentors throughout my life. Michael Harrison is the commissioner in Baltimore, Ronald Serpaz, who is the police chief in New Orleans, Nashville, out in Washington, and some other places. Those are individuals I talk to on a regular basis. I have a whole network of retired police chiefs from across the country that I've become friends with over the years. So, there's many times at night I pick up the phone and say, I'm dealing with this, what do you think? I'm a member of a think tank, a police think tank. I'm really involved in the academic side of policing, the policy piece, and to me, the thing that I get excited more than anything, other than fighting crime, and it's really hard to fight crime as police chief. I have to get out of everybody else's way and let them do that. But what you see, there's a lot of innovations going on in policing right now. And there's agencies that are leading, there are agencies that are kind of bringing up the middle, and there's agencies that are following on the tail. And I want Knoxville Police Department to be leading with new innovations across the country, and being plugged into a lot of these national organizations is a big help. I'm on the board now of called the Policing Knowledge Lab out of the Bureau of Justice Assistance. I'm on the board of the Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement out of Georgetown University Law School. So we're innovating in policing across the country, and many of those innovations can be replicated or incubated right here in Knoxville. It's really exciting.
The ABLE program.
Yes.
One of those innovations you might be speaking of. Talk about that and how implementing the program has gone.
It's transformational. So, ABLE is something that came out, in New Orleans before the murder of George Floyd. And when George Floyd was murdered, that really served as a catalyst to help spread this across the country. Over 300 police departments across the country in over 41 states. We're the only agency in Tennessee to join, but we just started our ABLE training. We have 8 certified instructors, including me, and they have to go through a really in-depth training program to become an instructor. And you actually learn a lot about social science, and some of this social science is actually built out of the lessons we learned from the Holocaust. And if you look at some of the transformations when the Nazi Party took over in the early 1930s, the German police and many of the German judicial system was involved in that. And we learned a lot from that process, and we learned a lot from experiments that came out from the social science from those days as well. And that really helped shape human behavior. And there's 2 types of people, active bystanders and passive bystanders. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit.
This is very interesting.
But people think that they're active bystanders, where if they see something, they will step up and intervene. And what the research overwhelmingly shows is that people are not active bystanders, they're passive bystanders. They will stand by and watch when something happens, even police officers. So that's why it's so important to train police and train other individuals on how to be an active bystander and give them the tools to step up and intervene. And many of the incidents that you've seen where police officers have gotten into trouble nationally is because one police officer didn't step up and stop that from happening. And if one officer would have stepped up and stopped that incident from happening, you wouldn't even know about it. And that's what we're trying to teach all across the country, and we're going to be bringing that to Knoxville as well.
It's not here yet.
Well, the command staff just went through the training, and starting in June, which I guess is like about a week or so, starting in June, the whole department will get trained. Now, we do it in small groups. So we train in groups of about 8 to 10. So it'll take the rest of the year for us to get trained. And the reason we train in small groups is about half the class is learning about the science of this, and the other half is actually getting down in the weeds and doing role plays. Just like we would train with our firearms out at the range. We actually go through role plays or get in a simulator. It's the same thing. We actually will get and do role plays and practice this out and practice intervening and try to develop that muscle memory like you would with any type of other police training.
This kind of training might have come in handy with the case of Lisa Edwards. She was released from Fort Sanders, went into police custody, was complaining of health issues, seemed to be ignored in the body cam footage by officers, and ended up dying of a stroke. What did it feel like for you seeing that body camera footage?
It was just absolutely disgusting, to watch that video. I was attending a church service in East Knoxville on Sunday when that incident happened, and I remember coming in directly from church to come watch that video. And we had a room of our leadership team, the command staff was in there, and we pulled that video up for the first time. And you could hear a pin drop in our room when we were watching that video for the first time. And it was absolutely disgusting to watch that video. It was horrible to watch that video. But one thing that you did see in that video was the transportation driver actually started the initial steps that we teach in ABLE about intervening. He was trying to intervene. He had never gone through the training before, didn't know, had the same level of exposure to the program that everyone else in the KPD was almost none. And he started the process to intervene. And that was one thing that really stuck out for me. He was actually trying to intervene on the supervisor that was out on that scene.
How are those officers doing now? I mean, they're still on the force.
Yes.
They did face some disciplinary action. Are they going to undergo the ABLE training? I guess every officer will?
Yes, every employee in KPD is going to undergo the ABLE training. I actually spoke to one of the police officers that was suspended actually about becoming an ABLE instructor, because I think there's a lot you can learn from personal experiences. There is an officer that was involved in an incident in New Orleans that is actually, there's actually a case study, an ABLE built around it, and he's one of the most outspoken advocates for the program. He's an instructor. He's actually gone around with me to other parts of the country actually speaking about the benefits of active bystandership training. So I think there's a lot of potential here for those employees to be able to tell their story and talk about what they could have done better on that scene.
I'm sure there's been some self-examination between each of those officers. It's made headlines for a while now, involved in a lawsuit. I mean, I'm sure this has caused them a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about the opioid crisis. It's really bad in East Tennessee. New data from the fire department shows overdoses are happening all over, but they're specifically happening in certain areas, Merchants, Broadway, 3 blocks of Broadway to be more specific. Administering Narcan at record levels. Talk about that crisis and what you think the root of it is and how you guys can help it.
So that was one of the things that actually really surprised me when I came here, being the new police chief in Knoxville, about how much the opioid problem was actually affecting Knoxville. And it's a huge challenge for the police department, because not only are we approaching violent crime, not only are we trying to deal with community issues, but we literally have people overdosing every day. And there's so many calls to service that we go on every single day that are involving people who are addicted to narcotics, and they're suffering serious problems because of that. And it really ties up a lot of our time. So it affects our ability in a lot of ways to be able to deliver effective public service. So it's something that we have to factor in to how we patrol. And certain areas of the community, we have to dedicate more police officers to make sure that we're able to respond effectively. We coordinate really closely with the fire department, EMS, and the service providers like CARM and some of the other homeless advocates as well to try to work closely with them. It's a huge problem here in Knoxville.
Do you see it happening mostly among the homeless population, or does it expand outward?
Oh, it absolutely expands outward. So the homeless population is, I think, it's probably the most visible because you see it right there in front of you. You know, we could walk 10 minutes from here and you can see it, with your own eyes right in front of you. But it's really in all segments of our community. It's not just in one segment of our community. It's really spread out in all segments of our community.
It seems to be that we have an increase in the homeless population as well, and since those things go hand in hand, how much of overdoses, the homeless population, how much of the time of your officers is that dominating?
It's a significant focus for us every day, but especially downtown. When I came here, actually, as an applicant just interviewing for the job, I spent a lot of time walking around downtown Knoxville. I love to walk around, eat at different places and walk around and check stuff out. And saw all of the problems that we were facing in the downtown in New York City. And we have made a concerted effort to clean up downtown in New York City. And I think you could really see the difference from 12 months ago to now. I think it looks a lot better. And I'm proud that we've been able to do that by making minimal arrests. We've really encouraging people to go and enter some of the service providers. We've had to make some arrests, but I think downtown looks a lot better. We have a long way to go. But we've put a lot of work into downtown in Old City to make it a place where anyone in the area could come down, have a good time, spend some money, and go to a ball game and go back while feeling safe.
Do you think it's being handled appropriately by the city?
Oh, absolutely. I think the city and the mayor, I think they're doing an excellent job with dealing with the homeless crisis. I mean, it's a crisis that you're seeing all across the country, not just here in Knoxville. And I think the city is dealing with this with compassion. I think the city is dealing with this in the appropriate way. You can't force people to get help as much as we would like to. You can't force someone who's addicted to narcotics to go seek treatment. And what we could do is encourage them. And then from our side, from a policing side, if people continue to commit public order crimes, after we warn them a couple of times, we're gonna arrest them and bring them either to the behavioral health unit with Helen Ross McNabb, or we're gonna bring them to jail. So I think the city has a measured response to this, and I think you could really see the difference out here. I think it's night and day from 12 months ago.
Do you still believe the state felony homeless law said that it's against the law, punishable by up to 6 years in jail, I believe, for camping on public property? You said we can't enforce that because homelessness is not illegal. Do you still believe that? So
we have a policy right now, so we actually can enforce that. We have to have a mid-level supervisor that actually come out to the scene to make sure that charge is appropriate. And what I meant with that was I didn't want one of our officers to take someone on the very first instance and arrest someone for a very serious felony when we have all kind of options underneath that to try to get that person help, either with Helen Ross McNabb, one of the service providers, give them a warning. If someone continues to reoffend, we absolutely have the option to use that law. But I don't want that to be the first thing that we do. That's like going to the nuclear bomb when we have all of these options right below that we could use that have been more effective. And, let me say this, I think our team, especially the Central District, Captain Sammy Schaefer and his team, they've done a tremendous job with really cleaning up downtown, and we've not had to use that law once.
Y'all are partnering with Helen Ross McNabb on certain police calls, is that right?
Yes.
And can you explain more about that and how that's going?
Absolutely. So we have two main partnerships with Helen Ross McNabb. We have the Behavioral Health Unit, where if we have someone that's down here right now that maybe commits a public order crime, instead of bringing them to jail, we could bring them to the Behavioral Health Unit. And what that does, that person has to agree to go into that program, but they go in and get help. And the purpose of that is to try to change behavior, right? If we arrest someone for a public order crime right now, they'll be out of jail in probably about 6 hours, walking right back down here again. What have we really accomplished? Not much. But if we bring them to Helen Ross McNabb and that behavioral health unit, they could try to get that person the help they need and to help change behavior. But the program I think that I'm more excited about is our co-responder program. And so right now we have 4 co-responder teams that go out, and when we have certain calls where a social worker could be beneficial, a police officer and a social worker will go out side by side and try to handle that call.
A domestic, like what kind of, give me an example.
Mental health, usually
Standoff?
more like public order crime. So like many of the calls and service that we get every single day, like, you could walk right out here by the Mission District and you'll see people in crisis right now. And they have varying degrees of mental illness and they may cause a disturbance. So sometimes when just a police officer shows up, just by our presence will escalate that situation. So having a co-responder, a practitioner with a police officer, that social worker can then make a connection with that person and then not only resolve that incident, but hopefully get that person to seek some type of treatment. Once that person gets in CARM or one of the other service providers, there's a high likelihood that eventually they'll change behavior, they'll be rehabilitated and be able to enter society as a productive member of society. And that's our ultimate goal.
And it seems to be working, moving in the right direction?
Absolutely. Our co-responder teams are doing great work out there.
Okay, let's talk about the 313 initiative, this drug pipeline between Detroit and Knoxville.
Yes.
How did this happen? What is your theory on how this all began?
The
drug pipeline from Detroit to Knoxville, has this been going on for a while? Why us? Yeah. I think it's I-75, I-40 probably. Just talk a little bit about that.
That's a great question because that's something, coming from a high crime city like New Orleans, it's not something that I expected to see. But, I think what you have is, you have a potent drug market like Detroit, and you have natural interstate corridors that actually traffic right through Ohio, right through Knoxville, down to Chattanooga. We sell more guns in the state of Tennessee per capita than any other state in the United States. And so I think, you have a natural connection of drug traffickers that are coming down from Detroit that are getting these drugs, bringing them down here, but they're in gun shows every single weekend. So if you're in a gun show and down here in East Tennessee, there are drug dealers and drug traffickers from Detroit that are coming down here to buy guns as well. And so, it's something that we focus on.
What do you make of that? I mean, do you not think there should be laws that prevent that?
So, there's laws right now that prevent straw purchases. And what that is, if you're a convicted felon, you can't purchase a weapon. So if, a convicted felon brings someone with them to purchase that gun for them, then that's a straw purchase. And we actually make cases like that just about every single weekend.
Really?
Right here in Knoxville. So it's something that's very important. But, why is it? I think it's supply and demand. You have, a natural corridor. You have people coming down here to buy guns as well. And that's where a majority of our violence comes from. That you have, when you have the gang and drug-related violence, a majority of it is individuals coming from out of state, coming down here, who are dealing narcotics, trafficking in firearms and guns, firearms and narcotics, and they're involved in violence. And you have gangs from Detroit operating here in Knoxville. And it really makes it a challenge from a policing standpoint when you have those gang members going back and forth because they're not here all the time. If they're here all the time, it's much easier for us to take enforcement action.
So the 313 initiative is essentially opening up the lines of communication between the departments in Detroit and here, is that right? And maybe along the pipeline, I guess, because there's probably more cities involved as well?
Yeah, so it's opening up the lines of communication and intelligence sharing with all of the agencies down from Detroit all the way down through that interstate corridor, and we all work together to stop the trafficking of those narcotics coming down and the guns going back up. And it's very, very successful. And I think it's going to continue to bear fruit for us.
Yeah, in February, you busted, I believe 7 people were arrested, all from Detroit?
Yes. And, also, a significant portion of the murders that we have all have a Detroit connection as well.
All right. We talked a little bit about gun violence, but let's talk about the recent school shooting at Covenant School in Nashville, where 3 children and 3 administrators passed away. We saw the response by the Metro Nashville Police Department, pretty textbook response. They went in, they took down the shooter and saved lives. We also look back to the video from Uvalde where the police response was abysmal by most standards.
Yes.
Officers stood outside of a classroom where the shooter was barricaded for an hour. How do you ensure that your police force acts in accordance to how Nashville acted and not Uvalde? What have you implemented to ensure that happens?
Sure. So Nashville really set the bar high, and in the aftermath of that shooting in Nashville, one of the I deliver a message almost every week to our employees, and that's really what I talked about. Is Nashville set the bar high, and we have to train. We have to train over and over and over again to make sure that when one of these incidents, when they happen, and they will happen, because you're seeing them happen all across the country. It's just a reality of life in America right now, that the members of KPD are able to respond effectively. We do active shooter drills and active shooter training. We just had one not long ago in the Westtown Mall where we had large elements of KPD went out and simulated responding to an active shooter. But we also have to train on a small unit level as well, because it's not going to be our SWAT team when an active shooter happens. The SWAT team is not going to be the first one going out. It's going to be the police officers that are working right now in Knoxville that are on this day shift today. They're the ones that are going to have to go out. And we need to train as a group. And we need to discuss as a team what we're going to do when these incidents happen, but we need to get out there and train, and that's what we're doing right now. The men and women of KPD are equipped with rifles and shotguns to be able to neutralize any threat that would happen, and we're training right now. We are prepared. The leadership is prepared as well. So we're covering it from every level, from a leadership perspective, from a training level. Officers have the equipment they need, and we're working really closely with the school system as well. If one of these incidents would happen, we're already pre-coordinating to make sure that we have the most effective response possible.
I'm sure you think about these things all the time. What could happen? I think we all do.
Yes.
That have loved ones, our kids in school, or loved ones going to a music festival, whatever the case may be. When you saw what happened in Nashville and how the officers responded, did you use that as an example to your own officers and the Uvalde as an example of what not to do? Like, how do you navigate that with your own department?
Absolutely. So when I saw the response in Nashville, once I got over the initial grief of the tragedy that happened, I was proud with the way law enforcement responded. I texted John Drake, the chief of Knoxville, and I was just congratulated him on the response that his team did. And like I said, just a second ago, they set the bar high. That's the level of response that not only in Knoxville, but as the profession of policing, we need to deliver that same level of response to any incident across the country. And we need to train, we need to be mentally ready, and the leadership needs to be mentally ready as well. And we always have to be continue to prepare, because when these incidents do happen, we only have one chance to get it right, and we have to get it right.
Tennessee has been in national headlines quite often for the Covenant School shooting, also for the death of Tyree Nichols at the hands of police in Memphis. Body camera footage has been released, surveillance camera footage has been released. How have you used that as a teaching tool for your own officers?
So, when I look at the Tyree Nichols case, what I saw was a failure in supervision. Where were the supervisors? What were the supervisors doing? And that's why what we're trying to do here in Knoxville and what we're doing in Knoxville is we're building systems in place to make sure those types of incidents don't happen, or if they do happen, that we catch it before it continues to be a systematic, a group of systematic failures. I think that's what you saw in Memphis. So that was the biggest takeaway here, is what is leadership doing? What are the mid-level supervisors doing to make sure that something like that doesn't happen? In the Tyree Nichols case, where was the sergeant, the shift sergeant, who was the first line supervisor? Where was that sergeant? Where was that lieutenant? Why was no one, when they heard that on the radio, going out there to see what was going on? That's what we cannot have here. Our supervisors need to be active, and they need to be going out there and making these scenes and seeing what's going on, just to prevent these things from happening.
It's surprising it even got to that point.
Absolutely, because what you should have had was a sergeant show up to the scene. Once you heard, that was the chase that went on for a while. Where was the supervision? And that's one thing that I've said here in KPD, is that supervisors will be held to a higher level of accountability than the regular line employees. And if you look at the discipline that has been given out since I've been here, supervisors will get greater discipline than police officers, because we have a higher level of responsibility.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see, what have we not talked about? We've talked about a lot.
Yes, we have.
Let's talk about the new, well, I guess relatively new law on rape kits in the state of Tennessee, that they have to be processed within 30 days of the investigation. I believe that just became law in April. How you have experience on this from a task force in New Orleans, where you were on a special, I believe, sex crimes. Am I saying this right?
Yes, I've spoken about this all across the country, yes.
Yes, so this is something that you know a lot about. First of all, talk about your experience with this.
So, my experience with this, in New Orleans, in 2010, sometime back then, I forget, a long time ago in New Orleans, I was put in charge of all sexual assault investigations, and we found about 1,200 sexual assault kits that were never tested. And we were able to get every one of those sexual assault kits tested. We opened up literally hundreds of old sexual assault cases. We were able to bring justice to some cases that were never prosecuted. But more importantly, that started a wave across the country where departments all across the United States thought they were handling sexual assaults properly, but they found that there were sexual assault kits all across the country that had never been tested. So New Orleans was the kind of the tip of the spear to really reevaluate how we handle rape kits. But this is a challenge all across the country because we do not have enough DNA testing space and enough DNA analysts across the country to test all these rape kits right now. It's a huge crisis across the nation.
And how is it going here?
So Knoxville, we do not have our own crime lab, so we send everything
to TBI?
To Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And I know they have a significant backlog right now because they're facing the same problems that all across the country that other labs are facing. We have a finite amount of lab space. We have a finite amount of DNA analysts. And I know TBI is trying to hire more DNA analysts right now. But it's a bandwidth issue right now.
Culture within the department, has it improved?
It has, but we have a long way to go. When you talk about culture change, this is something, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we're engaged in a marathon with changing culture. As Knoxville Police Department, we need to do a better job with how we talk to people. But let me say this, the overwhelming majority of the men and women in Knoxville Police Department do an excellent job every day when they go out there and interact with people. But we need to do a better job of how we talk to people. We need to talk to people with more compassion. We need to be more helpful with people, to try to help people. And that's something I think that you're going to see over time, that we're going to have a significant culture change here at KPD.
Are your officers feeling good about what they're doing? I know culture within a department is also, you said, feeling valued and enjoying your job, feeling like you're well compensated. There's lots of things that go into morale in a department. Do you feel like it's better?
Absolutely. I do feel like they feel like they're making a difference. But also, it can be a challenge in American policing, not just here in Knoxville, but everywhere across the country. You go out and you handle a high volume of calls every single day involving the same stuff, involving people who are mentally ill, involving people who are facing, chronic drug addiction, chronic homelessness, chronic, all of these chronic problems. So that can be really challenging for the profession right now. But I think also the men and women are seeing that we're investing in them. We're investing in better training for them. We're investing in new technology. We're about to bring a new records management system in place right now in KPD to make their access to documents and the data that they need a lot more streamlined. So we're investing in this department. We're investing in them. And we believe in what they're doing, and I think they feel that they're out there making a difference as well.
What's going on with the new police facility? I'll ask you. I've got you.
Well, we're moving in right now. Actually, my office is moving in this week, and we've been moving in now over about 5 or 6 weeks now. And we have a lot of stuff, so it takes a while for us to move. But I'm super excited to get in a new building. Wasn't
there supposed to be a room where more cameras are put up around the high crime areas, and then you were going to have kind of a database where your officers could monitor the community?
Yeah.
Am I remembering this right?
You are. So we're going to be building a real-time information center. So that's going to be in another phase of this, but we're putting the wires and the walls in right now for that. Mm-hmm. But that's really going to be a game changer for us. It's going to be an information center where city cameras, that information can feed in, and then what that will do is that will help us. It's not, you don't really get a lot of monitoring going on, but if something happens, if a crime happens, it allows us to be able to come in after the fact and really kind of backtrack and help us solve that crime. And as we expand out, that's really going to be a game changer for us.
When you were young, what made you want to get into police work?
Oh man, so growing up in New Orleans, I remember going to Mardi Gras parades as a kid and seeing the New Orleans police officers out there standing in the street and their powder blue uniforms on with the hat on, and it was the coolest thing in the world. And I had, some friends, some parents that were a member of the New Orleans Police Department. Someone in my family was always a member of the New Orleans Police Department going back to the beginning of time. So I saw my uncle come over all the time in his uniform, and it was always fascinating to watch NOPD officers work. So I knew from a young age that I didn't want to be a police officer. I wanted to be a New Orleans police officer.
And you were, but then you
Yes.
left,
Yes.
shockingly enough.
Yes.
Did you think you would be chief there someday?
No, absolutely not. The challenge with, a big city like that is only one person could be chief at a time. And, I was a deputy chief for 7 years. So I was at that level, one rung below the police chief. And, I really, honestly, had no desire to be a police chief. I loved what I did. I was over field operations for 5 years. I was over all of the detectives for 2 years, which is the coolest job in the world, it really is. To be over all of those, all of those murder investigations, all of the sexual assault investigations, that's what I loved. But, when you're in those spots for a long time, you have to kind of get out of the way and make room for someone else to come up. And when this opportunity presented itself and it was a place where I really felt like I wanted to live long term, then, I jumped all over it. And this is not a job that I'm doing for a stepping stone. I like it here. I really want to stay here. And, I just bought a house. I'm putting a lot of money into it. So I'm not looking to leave in a couple of years. I really want to be able to make this last and be able to stay here.
What is your biggest hope? Last question. What is your biggest hope for the future and your number one goal?
Well, my number one goal obviously is to reduce violent crime, right? Violent crime is our number one goal. We're never going to back off on that. But beyond that, to be able to affect a real lasting culture change within KPD, and then to build the next generation of leaders to be able to come up through this organization. And, it's not a good sign when, a chief has to come in from the outside. And I want to be able to have the next generation of leaders coming up from within KPD, that there's a bunch of people that are capable to fill in for whenever I decide I'm going to move on to the next chapter of my life. There's a whole group of leaders ready to take my job.
That's great. Good job. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you. This is cool.
You can see that full-length interview on our WBIR app or WBIR.com. And next month, I sit down with Knox County Schools Superintendent Dr. John Ryswick to talk about what has been a very interesting first year on duty.